I just click it.
Just click it.
So do you want to try to get that set up first, Jerry, or should we just let them get started?
Just let them get started. Okay.
Ready? Go.
Okay. So good morning. Today we're going to walk you through some of the results of our project with the Los Angeles Compact, a collective impact organization working in education, focused on improving student outcomes for kids here in Los Angeles County. First, our agenda. So we're going to walk you through all of this, overview and research questions approach, our work on indicators, some highlights from select cities that we looked at, some notes on compact dashboards or visual data displays, some stuff on collective impact evaluation, and then frameworks and case studies. So our project was focused on two specific areas. First, we were asked to provide a landscape view of data indicators used by collective impact organizations across the country. In that effort, we reviewed information from about 70 city, county, other geography collective impact organizations, looking in particular at early childhood, post-secondary, and workforce development indicators. We were asked not to look at K through 12 indicators, primarily because a lot of that is in flux due to the transition to the Common Core State Standards and Smart Balance assessments here in California. Second, we were asked to provide some information on collective impact evaluation tools and methods as the organization, the client, looks in the coming years to hire a third-party evaluator to evaluate their progress thus far. And now I will pass it. Oh, wait. Do this. Okay. So these are just some of our research questions. They're quite simple. First, we were asked to look at the key indicators in use by collective impact organizations in workforce, post-secondary, and early childhood. We're also asked to look at evaluation tools and practices and methods that the LA Compact can use in a future evaluation that have been used by other firms and cities. Now I'll pass it over to Avery, who will talk about our approach.
So in order to conduct our analysis, we looked at a couple of different things. We talked to some experts in the field, 3 different cities and compacts around the country. So we had a series of expert interviews, including Seattle and Cleveland. We also had some data collected via Excel and created a spreadsheet of all of our indicators, as Chris mentioned, in our 3 categories, ECE, post-secondary, and workforce development, using 70 various compact reports. We coded those and were able to use Google Fusion tables to map all of these indicators for our client, which we will show you in a minute. As an aside, this is a version of a presentation we gave to our client about 3 weeks ago. We were able to present to the data work group, which is a group of different stakeholders, about 15 to 20 stakeholders in the community that are looking at new data indicators for the Los Angeles area. So new cutting edge things happening right here, and you're going to see the data that we were able to present to them as well. So beginning with early childhood education, we were able to collect a series of about 16 different indicators used to track information from the 70 different compact organizations across the country. So you'll see of our 70 reports, 59 of them actually listed specific ECE indicators. These are broken up into 2 different categories. You'll see here in the pink, these represent school readiness specific indicators, while the blue actually represent health indicators. The reason that some organizations or some compacts use health indicators is because there's just not enough data available for early childhood education. So as you'll see here, immunization, actually 13.5% of the reports use immunization rates as a proxy for school readiness because they don't have better data available to track. But as you'll see, local kindergarten readiness assessments, about 86% of the compacts use local KRAs. A local KRA is either a local, a district, or a statewide assessment that's used to track whether a student is ready for kindergarten. So Washington, for example, has a statewide local KRA that they're using to track this data. California does not have local KRA data. Los Angeles, obviously in California, LAUSD does not have this data either. So our client was really interested in getting a feel for what proxies other states or other compacts are using. So immunization, as I mentioned, low birth weight, another proxy, a health proxy used to track ECE readiness, 13.5%, prenatal care as well. One of the most interesting ones on here, as you'll see, is asthma. One of the compacts listed asthma rates as a proxy to measure school readiness because they were located in an area that had a lot of air pollution, and so there was a high rate of younger children being admitted into the hospital for asthma-related issues. And so because that was a really unique issue in the city, that compact was tracking that as a readiness tool for kindergarten. So what we did with these indicators, some fancy stuff here, we actually used Google Fusion Tables, as I mentioned, to track all of the data from our Excel spreadsheet. And what this did for our client was give them a visualization of what these indicators looked like on a map. So you're able to hover over each of the red dots, pull up the region, pull up all of the 16 indicators, and whether or not the city actually tracked said indicator. The client was also able to pull the direct compact report from this spreadsheet. And we have 3 different maps, one for ECE, one for post-secondary, and one for workforce development. Our client also wanted to know a little bit about some of the highlight cities, some best practices, if you will, what others are doing to track these given the lack of data. So we picked Step Forward as one of our highlight cities. It's in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'd never heard of Shreveport, Louisiana, but they are doing some really interesting things with ECE indicators, particularly related to health indicators. So as you can see, this is the most recent compact report of the 70. It was actually published in February, so very, very recent. And they did a really great job of breaking out their ECE indicators. So they are looking specifically at kindergarten readiness, early school enrollment, and then a variety of health indicators as mentioned, low birth weight, immunization, childhood obesity, and childhood poverty. Most impressive about this report is actually the trend line that they're pointing out. So as you can see, positive, negative trend lines here to show that the compact is moving in a positive direction or the city is going kind of in a negative direction, so they know exactly where to focus their efforts. So I will hand it off to my colleagues who will talk a little bit more about workforce development and post-secondary education.
Okay, so taking a look at the post-secondary education indicators that we found in looking at the 70 different cities, 63 of them had post-secondary indicators, and the colors that you see up here correspond to the different areas. Blue is persistence, pink is access, and yellow is college readiness. So you'll see that by far these top 3 are the ones that were the most common throughout the country. Almost all cities out of the 63 were looking at the completion of a bachelor's degree within 6 years. They give that 6 years instead of 4 years to give some time for people to complete that maybe aren't able to do that in 4 years. Also looking at the completion of associate's degrees or certificate programs. And enrollment in post-secondary programs. So they're looking at the beginning of a person's college career and then where they end up and if they actually graduate. And then looking down further, we've got some that go back more into the high school years. So looking at their readiness for college, ACT, test scores, both participation and the actual scores students are getting are 2 indicators that, that people were looking at a fairly high level. So yeah, we can go ahead to the next slide. So yeah, and so we did the same thing with the indicators, putting them on a map. You'll see that you can click on the name here and you will go directly to that city's report. A highlighted city, this is probably the one that I thought was the best, an exemplar, was Greater Cleveland. They had access to quite a bit of school district data. They were looking just at the Cleveland district, and so they were able to get about 10 of these out of 16 are directly from the school district. And so, while it might seem like a lot of data to handle, in some ways, in a smaller city, it's actually very useful to be able to look at some nuances, such as for ACT, they're looking to see the percentage of graduates with a score of 21 or higher. That's their benchmark for what they consider to be college-ready successful. But then they're also looking at the average number of times a student take the ACT. So they're really trying to look at some nuance in their indicators so that they can really help to improve for all different types of students that might be coming in at different levels. Okay, Rachel Cloud.
Thank you. So as far as workforce, as we know, our workforce currently is becoming very demanding and it's requiring students to have much more expertise. And actually in this country, by 2020, 60% of all jobs are going to require either post-secondary education and or some kind of training after high school. So the LA Compact is dedicating one of its 3 overarching goals to ensuring that students have access to ensuring their sustainable careers. So as you can see, we looked at, out of the 70 collective impacts that we looked at, 57 listed some sort of workforce development indicators. So currently our mission was to basically come up with this pile of quality indicators that would be proxies for students ensuring they have access to these susceptible careers. The most frequently used was degree attainment, either attaining a bachelor's degree or associate's degree. As you can see, 53 out of the 57 collective impacts listed this, used this. Unfortunately, a lot of these indicators were listed in these collective impacts, but a lot of them, the data was to be determined and they were unable to currently track many of these, which was a limitation to our data. Unfortunately, as you can see, 9 of these indicators tracked career readiness and then 2 tracked youth development. As you can see also, we also did the map for the career indicators, so if you hover over each of these yellow dots, it will show indicators. Okay. So the highlighted city for the workforce development was Thrive Chicago. It was honestly an amazing collective impact to read. They just had a great way of measuring the indicator that they're tracking as well as the source and the metrics on how it was being measured. Unfortunately, this is only the baseline report and they haven't come out with the future community reports, so we're unsure if they're increasing or decreasing in their impact right now. But it was really great. One of the things that really stood out was they actually have something called One Summer Chicago, and it was basically an additional collective of over 200 organizations that were offering the Chicago public schools internships. So it's basically like this huge collective of all these organizations, agencies, businesses. So the Chicago public schools are able to track the internships that are being given to these students, and that was one of the things that the Compact really wanted to know. How are people collecting data for internships and apprenticeships? So Chicago was really interesting to read about that. And I'll let Chris move on to the dashboards.
So since we have 2 minutes, I'm going to be brisk. We looked also at dashboards, which are these visual display at-a-glance looks of data to issues relevant to that, or the technical capacity of the staff to actually build a dashboard, whether that takes less or more effort than issuing just a conventional data report. Also the usefulness of the dashboard. Is it replicating data that is already in use by a partner? Will a partner actually look for and access a dashboard? We found some examples of good dashboards that are out there. South Seattle, Dallas, Richmond, and Baltimore each use systems that are pretty navigable and often well used.
Okay, so obviously a big chunk of our research was collecting these indicators for the Compact to use as far as measuring early childhood, post-secondary, and workforce. But another piece of our project was actually the LA Compact able to evaluate the current work that they're doing. As far as collective impact, in order to evaluate collective impact, there are 5 conditions that need to be placed in order for this system to run. So the 5, obviously, we have common agenda, continuous communication, backbone, function, mutually reinforcing, shared activity, shared measurement, and then we go into the evaluation piece. This was just one piece. There are many links that go into evaluating a collective impact, and this was one piece of evaluation. This is evaluating design and in evaluating the indicators that come with that, and we're going to finish.
So we have a little bit more work to do. The last 2 research questions of our project directly relate to collective impact evaluation, and we'll be conducting additional expert interviews. We urge you to read our report to find out more about collective impact evaluation. Thank you.
Oh, just comments. I just have a few. I think this is very interesting, although in terms of visualization, this is probably your worst slide because I can't figure it out. And I was waiting for something, given the other slides, you were very clear. Even though they had many points, I could at least see them. I can't see this. Maybe my eyes, but I bet others too.